Now stop that nonsense.
Don't you dare be civil with me after leading me on like this.
Oh, you're a pest.
HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. My son was born via emergency C-section, but if I wanted to be dramatic, I could tell you that I once had an entire human being trapped inside my abdomen, and a rescue team had to cut him out with a knife before his struggles to escape ended up killing us both. Obviously, phrasing and other creative aspects of descriptive speech can have a profound effect on your perception of what is being described. Any professional in advertising, marketing, or politics can tell you that. But why am I talking about it? That'd be because a recent article that was drawn to my attention by some of my fellow MRAs got me thinking about it in relation to feminist double standards. I'm Not Jealous, I'm Territorial, by Helen Ellis, published on December 6th in a Medium blog called Gay Mag, is a gymnastic exercise in the use of creative description to try to make emotional abuse of one's spouse sound cute, feminine, and most of all, acceptable. In the article, she describes Amazon's personal assistant bot Alexa as, quote, another woman, then explains why she would never allow such a thing in her home. She would actually be jealous of it. She compares the bot to the wide-eyed blinking I Dream of Jeannie character who gives her man everything he wants, a stereotype with which a real woman couldn't compete. She peppers the rest of her article with a cutesy repetition of the word blink to maintain this comparison as a theme. You know, because the bot has a light that blinks, and one of Jeannie's character traits is that doe-eyed, innocent blink. It's probably the cleverest word trick in the article. Don't worry about her husband's loss of shopping bot rights, though. He can't have a lot of things. He can't have men's magazines, for instance, because, of course, she's jealous of the photographs in them. He can't have sovereignty over his own existence. If my husband cheats on me in my dreams, she writes, I wake up furious. Or I used to. A few years back, I made it a New Year's resolution to stop chastising him as soon as he opens his chocolatey brown eyes because, as he has said, he didn't do anything. Hell, the poor guy can't even have a salad. Helen, the adorably crazy wife, went on to describe food service workers as an equivalent to sex dungeon mistresses, as she tried to excuse being personally offended at her husband's healthy eating choices. She compared her husband's interest in something she didn't normally make him for dinner to his being interested in something she didn't normally do in bed, and even described quizzing him over whether, since he wanted to switch up his dinner routine with the occasional salad, he also wanted to switch up their bedroom routine with some BDSM. That blink is starting to sound more appropriate as a placeholder for his expression of shock and confusion at his wife's bizarre leaps in logic. She sounds totally unhinged. This complete and utter whack job is emotionally abusing her husband over her own insecurities and presenting her description of that as clever jokes of a wife who takes her love just a little too far. Aw, ain't that cute? She's got him tied up in the basement. Don't you wish someone loved you like that? Imagine if a man wrote such an article about his wife or girlfriend. Feminists would bury the publisher in angry hate mail about perpetuating dangerous stereotypes, promoting male entitlement, and glorifying domestic violence. The hosted men's would never hear the end of it until they'd canceled the publication, even if an apology was issued, and the writer would be lucky if the only consequence he faced was the end of his writing career. Helen's article got a few comments about how crazy and abusive she sounded. It is still featured by Gay Mag, so those commenters didn't go beyond posting under the article. Aside from that, it didn't find its way into much public discussion. Complaints about it normalizing toxic femininity and abusive behavior certainly haven't trended on social media because, hell, everyone was busy freaking out over an ad featuring a wife who was excited about receiving an expensive luxury piece of exercise equipment for Christmas. Clearly, the Twitterati decided her abusive husband is forcing her to meet an unrealistic body standard, and the actor who portrayed him must be outed as a tool of the patriarchy. So, I'm Not Jealous went mostly unnoticed. How can anyone think of criticizing an overly enthusiastic housewife when there's a man with no discernible motives to demonize? Another article was drawn to my attention this morning. The double standard of the overenthusiastic spouse is bad, but this one really takes the salad. Study provides new insights into sexual coercion by women, writes Eric W. Dolan of SciMag. For once, the article contained a link to the October 2019 study, Sexual Coercion by Women, the Influence of Pornography and Narcissistic and Histrionic Personality Disorder Traits by Hughes, Brewer, and Kahn. Writer Eric presented the highlights. The researchers anonymously surveyed 142 women aged 16 to 53 years regarding sexual coercion, pornography use, and personality disorder traits. About 35% of the women admitted to engaging in nonverbal forms of sexual coercion, including persistent kissing and touching, or taking off their own or their target's clothes, despite them refusing sex. Nearly 16% of women also admitted to emotional manipulation and deception, such as repeatedly asking, using lies, questioning the target's sexuality, or threatening to break up. About 5% of women indicated they had exploited an intoxicated person, while just one participant reported using physical force or threats. He went on to note that women who agreed with statements such as, "I have rearranged my schedule so that I would be able to view pornography online without being disturbed," were more likely to report engaging in these forms of sexual coercion. And that participants who scored higher on measure of narcissistic and histrionic personality were also more likely to admit to exploitation of the intoxicated. But that these findings can't be extended to claiming porn causes these behaviors because the findings are correlational. The study's authors presumed the prevalence of female sexual coercion mostly uncharted territory due to lack of research. They then went on to pay homage to the feminist talking point that a large body of research shows that men are more likely to engage in sexual coercion than women. Recall, however, that the same study found that about a third of women, 35%, admitted to engaging in at least nonverbal sexual coercion of some type. When taking intoxication-facilitated coercion into consideration, other research has placed that number as high as 51%. These numbers are not significantly different than the numbers attributed to male self-reporting of similar behavior. They're just differently emphasized. In the world of sexual violence prevalence research reporting, if 35% of women are reported to have admitted to a predatory behavior, that's only 35%, as opposed to when 35% of men admit to the same behavior when it's over a third of their population. Both statements say the same thing, but they sure don't create the same impression. Then, if that 35% has admitted to a broad range of behaviors that include some mild and some serious infractions, the mild end will be emphasized when women's admissions are under discussion, while the more serious end will be emphasized when discussing male perpetration. If the motive for perpetration is the same for both sexes, it'll be described differently to attribute malice to men and lack of agency to women. For example, if perpetrators blame their sexual impulses on their targets, men are presumed to offend out of interest in gaining power and control over the victim, while women are said to be seeking interpersonal connection because they feel out of control, because using sexual coercion to make a guy your emotional tampon is totally not about gaining power and control over him. And as this more recent paper shows, if a factor can't be spun in a less derogatory light for women than for men, it gets swept under the rug when discussing women. While we hear all the time from feminists that porn interest among men is a sign and a cause of predatory, misogynistic attitudes, when women rearrange their lives around their porn viewing habits, there's definitely an association, but, well, we just can't draw any conclusions from it. Make no mistake, folks. This certainly isn't about gatekeeping the concept of sexual violence. Nobody is trying to prevent any changes to the social image that female perpetrators might have. Feminist researchers are not jealously guarding their female victim, male perpetrator narrative. They're just territorial. Blink. Tune in to HBR Talk as we discuss feminist double standards regarding sexual coercion, sexual violence, and partner abuse, and the impact of those double standards on recognition of and recourse for male victims of female perpetrators. HBR Talk streams on multiple platforms. You can tune in Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern via the link in the low bar, or find other viewing and listening options for that time or later on badgerfeed.com.